Everyone at the range thought she didn't belong. They didn't even bother to watch, until her first shot broke the record no one else could touch. The bell over the door gave a sharp clang as Selena Marshall stepped into Clearwater target range. Heads turned. Some folks squinted, some barely looked up from their coffee-stained score sheets. The smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air, mixed with sweat and old leather. Selena didn't flinch. She tugged the strap of her duffel bag higher on her shoulder and moved toward the front desk, her boots thudding lightly on the scuffed linoleum floor. Behind the counter, an older man with a thick grey mustache, name tag said Rick, barely glanced at her. "Sign-ups are over there," he said, pointing without looking. Selena gave a small nod, even though she didn't get a real hello, and scribbled her name onto the paper. Her handwriting was neat, practiced. She had learned a long time ago that when people were already looking for reasons to doubt you, you didn't hand them any extra ammunition. The range buzzed with low chatter. She caught a few snippets. "New blood today. Probably gonna pack up after her first round. Should be quick." Selena set her bag down on a bench and started unpacking. She was methodical. Ear protection, gloves, rifle case. No wasted movements. Years of muscle memory kicked in, the kind you don't lose even when the world tries to make you second-guess yourself. She wore simple jeans and a plain green jacket. No fancy patches, no tactical gear dripping off her like some of the regulars here. Just her and her tools. A group of men near Lane 5 kept glancing over. One of them, a stocky guy with a trucker cap and a red t-shirt stretched tight over his belly, whispered something that made the others laugh. Selena heard it. She heard all of it. But she didn't give them the satisfaction of reacting. She pulled her rifle from its case, inspected the barrel, and clicked the scope into place with the calmness of someone checking the weather. "Hey, Rick!" the guy in the trucker cap called out, loud enough for half the building to hear. "Might want to clear a spot near the exit. This one might not stay long." More laughter. A few chuckles echoed off the concrete walls. Rick just shrugged. He wasn't about to defend her. Selena's face stayed smooth, unreadable. But inside, there was a steady, burning focus, the kind that doesn't explode outward, but sharpens to a razor's edge. She settled onto a bench near the far wall, loading her magazines slowly, deliberately. Her hands moved with the kind of ease that only comes from years of training, long before anyone thought they had the right to size her up. The announcement crackled through the overhead speaker. "Open competition starts in 10 minutes. Get ready." People shuffled around, checking their gear, laughing louder now that they were trying to cover their nerves. Selena could feel the sideways glances, the weight of assumptions being stacked against her like sandbags. She didn't mind. She wasn't there for them. She was there because somewhere deep inside her, deeper than pride, deeper than anger, was the certainty of knowing exactly who she was. The kind of certainty nobody could take away. Selena glanced at the old corkboard near the desk, where the Hall of Fame scores were pinned. One name dominated the sheet for the past 6 years. Brett Dawson. Local hero. Shot a perfect score on moving targets back in 2017. People still talked about it like it happened yesterday. Selena smiled to herself, a small flicker that barely touched her lips. Records were meant to be broken. But there was still the matter of stepping up to the line and proving it first. Selena sat quietly, adjusting the strap of her glove, her mind steady. Around her, the noise grew, not from excitement, but from that particular brand of confidence that swells when people believe they already know how the story ends. 2 rows down, a man with a thick beard leaned back in his chair, tossing a foam earplug up and down in his hand. "You see her grip?" he said to the guy next to him. "Bet she's one of those Instagram shooters. Good for selfies, not much else." They laughed. Not cruel laughter exactly. More careless, the way people laugh when they think they're safe from being wrong. Selena pressed the ear protectors over her ears, shutting out most of the noise, but not all of it. A few of the comments still filtered through, thin and sharp. She let them pass. Words were easy. Hitting a mark from 50 yards? That took something different. Her mind flickered back to the fields of Broken Bow, Oklahoma, where she first learned to hold a rifle steady. Her father, Reuben Marshall, never shouted instructions. He stood quietly behind her, offering a tip here, a correction there. "Let the world get noisy," he used to say. "You stay quiet. Your hands know what to do." At 10 years old, she could knock a soda can off a fence post at 70 yards. By 13, she could outshoot every boy at summer camp. Not that anyone talked about it after. Winning was one thing. Winning when you weren't expected to was something else entirely. Back in Clearwater, the announcer's voice barked over the loudspeaker. "First group, take your positions." Selena wasn't up yet. She had drawn a late slot. Time to watch and wait. The first wave of competitors lined up. Selena watched closely, not judging, just observing. A man with a polished black rifle jerked the trigger too hard, pulling his shots low. A woman in a camo jacket flinched every time she fired. No one was perfect, but they cheered each other anyway. A little club of shared assumptions. The champion, Brett Dawson, wasn't competing today. He stood back, arms folded across his chest, chatting with a few buddies near the vending machines. From time to time, he looked over at Selena. Not in a mean way, more like she was a new dog at the park, and he was waiting to see if she'd bark or bolt. Selena met his glance once. Quick, neutral, then turned her attention back to her equipment. The minutes dragged. She kept her breathing even, feeling the slight weight of the rifle across her lap, the familiar rhythm of her pulse ticking steady in her ears. A kid with braces, maybe 16, finished his round and whooped when he saw his score pop up on the screen. His friends clapped him on the back. Selena smiled, small and real. Let them have their moment. She wasn't there to steal it. She was there for something else entirely. Rick called the next names. Another group shuffled to the firing line. Selena's hands stayed busy, checking, rechecking, moving through her ritual without hurry. She caught a few more whispers. She's still here? Maybe she's just watching. Maybe she's scared. Selena zipped her rifle bag shut and slid it under the bench. Everything she didn't need, put away. Everything she needed, right in front of her. The more they talked, the quieter she became inside. It was a strange kind of math. The louder the world, the more silent she grew. She saw her name climb higher on the sign-in sheet, almost her turn. She flexed her fingers inside the glove. No tremble, no sweat, just a small buzz of energy in her chest, like an engine warming up, steady and sure. A man brushed past her on the way to the restrooms, giving a small laugh under his breath. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Selena didn't look up. She didn't need to. But soon enough they were all going to be looking whether they wanted to or not. "Selena Marshall, Lane 7. The announcement crackled through the speakers, cutting through the small talk like a blade. Every head turned. Some pretended not to look. Others didn't bother hiding it. Selena rose from the bench, lifting her rifle with practiced ease. Her boots made a soft, deliberate sound against the concrete floor. She didn't hurry. She didn't drag her feet either. Just a clean, even walk toward the line. Lane 7 sat near the far end of the range, half shadowed by the afternoon light pouring through the high windows. Good. Fewer distractions. She stepped onto the lane, set her gear down carefully, and began her setup. First, she adjusted the stand. Then she checked the scope. A Vortex model, battered but clean, the kind that told you the shooter cared more about performance than price tags. She brushed a speck of dust from the barrel, sighted downrange, and drew a deep breath through her nose. To her right, a pair of men leaned against the partition, whispering. One shook his head like he already knew how this was going to end. Selena blocked them out. One bullet at a time. That's how you beat expectations. Rick sauntered down the line, clipboard in hand. He paused briefly at Lane 7, gave her rifle a once-over, then scribbled something down without saying a word. Maybe he thought she didn't belong. Maybe he didn't care. Didn't matter either way. Selena loaded her first round, the metallic click loud in her ears despite the muffs. Her hand hovered a moment longer over the bolt, not from hesitation, but from ritual. A silent promise to herself. Focus. Breathe. Break. She leaned into the stock, feeling the familiar weight settle against her shoulder. The target downrange swayed slightly in the air currents. Selina adjusted for it without thinking, her body and mind slipping into a rhythm older than memory. The rangemaster raised a hand. "Shooter ready?" Selina gave a small, firm thumbs up. A few latecomers wandered toward the seating area, drawn by the low buzz of expectation. Somebody elbowed Brett Dawson, muttering something Selina couldn't hear. Brett smirked, arms still crossed, eyes locked on lane 7. The rangemaster dropped his hand. Selina squeezed the trigger. Crack! The shot snapped through the air, sharper than most, almost musical. Selina felt the rifle buck gently against her shoulder, saw the bullet punch clean through the center ring on the target. Dead on. There was no roar of approval, no whistles, just a sudden, heavy silence, the kind that rolls in when the world realizes it might have made a mistake. Selina didn't move. She chambered the next round smoothly, without looking at the growing audience behind her. Another breath, another squeeze. Crack. Again, dead center. Somewhere behind her, a folding chair creaked loudly as someone sat down too fast. Selina worked through her shots, steady and methodical, as if she were the only person in the room. By the time she emptied her first magazine, there wasn't a single casual conversation left at Clearwater target range. Only the sound of a single woman firing with the precision of a machine, except machines didn't know how to make it look this effortless. Selina stood back from the booth as the rangemaster moved in to inspect her sheet. Even from where she stood, she could see it, a cluster of holes so tight it looked like one big tear. Rick checked the monitor, his brow furrowing, lips moving as he counted quietly. Selina removed her ear protection and set them down neatly. The room seemed unnaturally loud now, the squeak of sneakers on concrete, the metallic rattle of gear being packed away, someone whispering her name. She ignored it all. The rangemaster looked up at her, blinking a few times like he wasn't sure what he was seeing. You might want to come have a look at this, he said. Selina didn't move yet. She wasn't finished. She reloaded. She had more to say. But first, she was going to finish the message she had started. One bullet at a time. Selina didn't rush. She slid another round into the chamber, letting the quiet stretch a few seconds longer. It wasn't about showing off. It was about respect. For the craft, for herself, for every minute she'd spent preparing for moments exactly like this. Another breath. Slow and steady. She felt the rise and fall of her chest, the slight tension in her shoulders, the solid pull of the trigger under her finger. Crack. Third shot. She barely blinked. It hit clean through the same ragged hole the others had made, dead center, as if the bullet had been guided by an invisible hand. The audience behind her shifted again, uneasy now, the earlier smirks turning into something quieter, something a little closer to awe. Selina's focus stayed locked. She cycled through the shots, each one punctuating the air with a sharp report, not rushed, not delayed. Rhythm, breath, trigger, a quiet storm, building shot by shot. When her second magazine emptied, the rangemaster didn't even wait for her to step back. He was already glancing at the monitor, his face shifting through a slow series of emotions. Confusion, realization, disbelief. Behind her, the whispers started. Only they sounded different now. Did you see that grouping? That's professional level. Who is she? Selina caught none of it. Her world narrowed to the small square of the target far down range, the weight of the rifle against her palms, the faint smell of burnt powder. Rick approached the lane, frowning at the tablet in his hand, then at Selina, then back at the tablet. You're trending higher than anyone today, he said, voice a little rough around the edges, like the words didn't sit right in his mouth. Selina didn't react. She loaded one final round. One shot left. This one wasn't just about precision. This was the exclamation point at the end of everything she'd been writing with her hands and heart. She lined up the sights. Her breathing slowed until it was just a whisper in her ears. Pull. Crack. The final shot landed with brutal perfection. Dead center again. She set the rifle down gently on the bench, the way a musician lays down an instrument after the last note fades. Rick stared at the monitor. The rangemaster joined him. Then a third guy. Then Brett Dawson himself, arms still folded, his confident smirk now melted into something harder to define. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the rangemaster let out a low breath. New record, he muttered, like he almost didn't believe it. Selina peeled off her gloves, tucked them into her bag, and wiped her palms against her jeans. Her name, plain, simple Selina Marshall, flashed across the big screen at the front of the room. Top score. Broken by a woman most of them hadn't even bothered to greet when she walked in. Brett pushed off from the wall, walked slowly toward lane 7. His boots echoed across the concrete, loud in the hush. He stopped a few feet away, looked at her. Really looked this time. That was solid work, he said, voice low, almost grudging. Selina didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just met his eyes with that same calm she'd carried through every shot. Thanks, she said simply. Someone clapped in the back. One awkward beat, then a few more joined in. The sound grew, unsteady but real. Selina nodded once, almost a bow, and slung her rifle bag over her shoulder. She wasn't interested in being a spectacle. She wasn't here to teach lessons. She had already done that without a single word of lecture. But she knew as she walked away that the lesson had landed harder than any bullet ever could. Selina made her way back to the bench, her movements smooth and unhurried. She packed her things with the same care she used when firing. Deliberate, focused, detached from the noise around her. But the noise was growing. Conversations that had been casual earlier now took on a different tone. Lower, heavier, edged with something unspoken. The regulars, the same ones who barely looked at her an hour ago, were now sneaking glances at her out of the corners of their eyes. Brett Dawson stayed standing by lane 7, arms dropped to his sides now. He scratched the back of his neck, a habit people have when they're trying to buy themselves a little time. You ever shoot competitively? He asked, stepping closer. His voice was friendlier now, but still stiff, like it didn't quite know how to bend. Selina zipped up her rifle case and stood, her body relaxed but ready. Here and there, she said, keeping it simple. No need to dress it up. No need to explain her life to people who never bothered asking in the first place. Brett nodded, that kind of slow nod people use when they're trying to recalibrate everything they thought they knew. You're good, he said after a pause. Real good. From across the room, Rick watched the exchange, his face unreadable. A younger man with a buzz cut, one of Brett's friends, leaned over to another guy near the vending machine. Knew she had good form, he muttered, loud enough to be heard, though nobody had been saying that earlier. Selina caught it, but didn't react. She had heard those types of rewrites before. When you fail, you're on your own. When you succeed, suddenly everybody knew you had it in you all along. The rangemaster walked over, holding a clipboard and looking slightly sheepish. We'd, like to put your photo up. Hall of Fame board, he said, gesturing toward the corkboard where Brett's photo had reigned supreme for years. Selina gave a small smile, polite but distant. No thanks, she said. I'm good. The rangemaster blinked, caught off guard. He half laughed like he thought maybe she was joking, but when she didn't change her expression, he cleared his throat awkwardly and nodded. People were still watching. Not with mockery now, with curiosity. Maybe a little bit of something close to respect, but Selina wasn't interested in earning that kind of respect. Not if it had to be dragged out of people like pulling teeth. She slung her duffel bag over her shoulder and started walking toward the door. Someone clapped again, hesitant, but real. A second person joined in. Selina kept moving, each step steady, each breath easy. At the door, she paused, turned just slightly, enough to catch the room in the corner of her eye. If you're going to bet against someone, she said, voice calm and clear, make sure you're not just looking at the surface. Then she pushed open the door and stepped into the sunlight. The afternoon heat hit her face, the bright Florida sky stretching wide and endless overhead. She took a long breath, tasting the salt in the air drifting in from the Gulf, the hint of fresh-cut grass from a nearby field. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her dad. "How'd it go?" Selina smiled, genuine this time. "Fine," she texted back. "Better than fine." She tucked the phone away and headed toward her car, her keys jangling lightly in her hand. Behind her, inside the building, the door swung shut with a dull thud. But the memory of what she left behind wasn't going to fade nearly as fast. Selina tossed her duffel bag onto the passenger seat and slid into her car. She sat there for a minute, her hands resting lightly on the steering wheel, letting the hum of adrenaline slip away. It wasn't about the record. It wasn't even about the people who doubted her. It was about something older and deeper, a promise she'd made to herself years ago. That no matter where she went, no matter what anyone thought when she walked through a door, she would show up as herself. Every time she started the car, the engine grumbled to life, steady and familiar. Selina pulled out of the parking lot without a backward glance. She didn't need a photo on the wall to remind her of what she'd done. The late afternoon sun threw long shadows across the streets of Clearwater. Selina drove with the windows down, the warm wind tugging at the edges of her jacket. She passed rows of small businesses, a bait shop, a tire center, a diner with a faded sign swinging in the breeze. Ordinary places full of ordinary people, none of whom would ever guess what had just happened down at the range, and that was fine with her. At a red light, Selina caught her reflection in the side mirror. For a second, she thought about all the girls growing up in places like Broken Bow, girls who might walk into rooms one day and be looked at like they didn't belong. She thought about how many would walk back out without ever getting the chance to prove otherwise. She hoped somehow the story would ripple out, not in a big noisy way, but in quiet conversations, in second thoughts, in small changes. Maybe the next time someone new walked through those doors, there would be just a little more room made for them. The light turned green. Selina pulled onto the highway, the sun dropping lower behind her. Her dad's voice floated back to her from old memories. "You don't have to shout to be heard," he used to say. "You just have to hit your mark." Selina smiled, feeling the weight of the rifle still ghosting against her shoulder, the clean snap of every shot still humming somewhere deep in her bones. There was power in showing people who you were without asking their permission. There was power in staying steady when the world tried to nudge you off balance, not just at shooting ranges, not just in competitions, in boardrooms, in classrooms, in every room you stepped into. Selina didn't think she was a hero. She didn't think she had done something remarkable. She had just kept a promise to herself. She turned up the radio, an old country song filling the car, and let herself relax. She had earned that much. A blue pickup truck passed her on the left, two teenage boys inside laughing about something she couldn't hear. Life kept moving. It always did. Selina tapped her fingers against the steering wheel, steady in her own rhythm, carrying her victory like something small and quiet tucked into her pocket. Not a trophy, not a title, but a piece of herself. No matter what came next, no matter what room she entered, she would carry this with her. She knew exactly what she could do. And now, so did they. But the real prize wasn't the record. It was knowing she never needed their permission in the first place. The drive home was long but easy. Selina didn't mind the time alone with her thoughts. Out on the open stretch of highway, with the Gulf fading behind her and the wide Florida sky yawning overhead, she let herself replay the day. Not to second-guess it, not to pick it apart, but to honor it. She thought about the way Brett Dawson had looked at her when the score popped up. Not angry, not defensive, just surprised. Maybe a little humbled. Selina hoped it stuck with him. She hoped the next time he saw someone who didn't fit the picture he was used to, he might leave a little more space in his mind for possibilities. Small shifts. That's how the world really changed. Not with giant, sweeping moments that made headlines, but with ordinary afternoons when someone quietly shattered an invisible wall. Selina turned off the highway onto a smaller country road, the sun melting into orange and purple streaks across the sky. She thought about the girls growing up right now in small towns, cities, suburbs, girls being taught directly or indirectly where they fit. She hoped maybe one day they'd walk into rooms without that invisible weight pressing down on their shoulders. Because someone like her had walked through first, had refused to leave. She pulled into the driveway of her small house on the edge of Dunedin, the porch light already flickering to life. Inside, her old Labrador, Moose, thumped his tail against the floor, happy just to see her. No expectations, no assumptions, just pure welcome. Selina dropped her bag by the door and sat down cross-legged on the floor, Moose shoving his head into her lap with a happy grunt. She scratched behind his ears, feeling the simple peace of home settle into her bones. The world could be noisy, judgmental, quick to label, but it could also be changed. One person, one moment, one refusal to shrink back at a time. Selina leaned her head back against the wall and let her eyes drift shut for a minute. Tomorrow would come, with its noise and its opinions and its sideways glances. She'd be ready. She always was. And maybe, just maybe, someone who had seen her that day at Clearwater Target Range would remember her the next time they were tempted to write someone off too soon. Maybe they'd think twice. Maybe they'd make space. Maybe they'd listen before judging. Selina smiled to herself, a small, private smile. Not for anyone else, just for her. It didn't take a grand speech or a loud entrance to leave a mark. Sometimes it only took standing your ground and hitting your target when nobody thought you could, and that was enough. So if you're listening to this right now, and you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or sized up before you even had a chance to speak, remember this. You don't have to shout to prove who you are. You don't have to wear it on your sleeve. You just have to know it deep down, and when your moment comes, because it will come, you'll be ready to hit your mark too. Thanks for spending this time with us. If you found something in Selina's story that hit close to home, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. We'll see you next time for another story that reminds you, the only permission you ever needed was your own.